Ah, Skyrim. A land filled with peaceful meadows, beautiful castles, and deadly circumstances. Today we'll be attempting to survive 25 days on legendary difficulty in survival mode. And to add to the challenge, we'll be doing all this with around 500 mods installed. Now I'll give a quick overview of what we'll be diving into so you're not completely lost along the way. The mod pack we'll be playing today is called Wildlander. It's a top-notch pack focused on bringing as much immersion and depth to Skyrim as physically possible. It overhauls every system as well as touches up almost every inch of the world. The main goal of the pack is to make Skyrim a more fleshed out and developed experience. In a lot of cases, this will make things more difficult. For example, we can't go running naked into a snowstorm without facing some serious hypothermia issues. Furthermore, this pack is developed around the Requiem mod, which in itself is a full system overhaul for Skyrim. This means that combat is more intense, with literally one blow from a well-timed enemy meaning absolute death, and that eating, drinking, and sleeping are essential if we want to have full stamina and mana for a fight. And trust me, we will. No more carrying 500 pounds of absolute trash with us everywhere we go, and every step will need to be calculated to prevent us from running out of the right supplies at just the wrong time. Now yes, this can be achieved easily by remaining within the walls of the holds across Skyrim. However, I want to avoid making this challenge too easy, so we'll only be allowed to stay one night in each city before needing to find a new place to rest. Our hero for this adventure will be a dashing high elf who is seeking to master all the mysterious magic that Mod Skyrim has to offer. To begin our journey, we're starting out in the wilds of Falkreath. It's a pretty neutral zone, but the chance for danger is certainly still there. My first goal is to make it to Whiterun. There I can get some essential supplies and make a bit of gold to help fund the travels. Now remember, I'll only have this one day to use Whiterun to its full potential. With this in mind, I spent the rest of day one running around the market, just checking things off my Bear Grylls grocery list. This included wood for building fires, which will keep me warm when it's cold, a barrel to store my stuff in, a tent because inns are overrated and a little too expensive for me, and lastly a backpack to carry it all in. With our shopping spree completed, and day one nearing its end, it was time for me to find a place to turn in for the night. I figured nobody would be using the small road outside of Whiterun, so for just tonight, this is our home. Day 2, we were headed up through Riverwood. I figured the first bandit hideout of the game should be easy enough for us to take on, and if we can manage to take out a few bandits, then their loot should set us up nice enough to make it out to Winterhold. In order to take full advantage of the mine and all of its armored up goons, I set up camp just across the river, so I can make multiple trips carrying armor and valuables back for myself. Because obviously there's no way I'm going to be able to carry 6 bandits worth of loot in just my one little knapsack. By the end of the day we had a nice haul and it was time to turn in for the night. So tomorrow we can trade pillaged goods for good gold. Day 3 we traveled to Winterhold and got accepted into the Mage's College. Now I already knew Firebolt, so passing the entrance exam was a breeze. And after going through the little Tolfdir tutorial we all know and agonizingly sit through, we spent the rest of the day preparing for Saarthal. And by that I mean looting the college of every room available. I like to think my characters in video games are nothing like me. They steal, lie, look handsome, and usually die an unusual amount of times. I'm pretty sure I'll only get one playthrough with my life, so I won't be playing around with it. Anyways, to round out the day, I spent my last few hours studying spells to improve my overall knowledge and power. Day 4, it's off to Saarthal. Anyone that's ever made this journey knows it's a cold and dangerous trip. To prove my point, our first encounter was with a troll who was invincible due to some insane health regeneration. Then once we were closer to the crypt, a group of bandits disguised as Imperials tried to rob me. Thankfully the Storm Atronach guarding Saarthal wasn't having any of their shenanery. Finally, we were told the biggest lie from Tolfdir.
It should be safe.
And then it was down into the dangerous Draugr-filled crypts to find ourselves a big shiny ball. Now most of this dungeon was quite simple, as a lot of the times the Draugrs come in either single file or no more than 2 at a time. Of course occasionally there's a big battle, but we can manage pretty well as long as we stick to our corners. Now the boss battle wasn't too bad, as I mostly used my skeletal summon and long-range firebolts to take him down. However, a few missteps here and there did result in us being frozen into a pitiful popsicle. Once completed, we hightailed it back to the college and told the Archmage, and received another quest. Finally, it was studying up on our conjuration to finish out the night, which allowed us to level it up just enough to unlock some new and powerful spells. Now, not many know this about the Felglow Keep quest, But if you travel to the dungeon before talking to Urag the librarian, then you can actually skip about 80% of the dungeon. You see, there's a key located on a mage right inside this big door as long as you come here before accepting the mission. Slay this mage, get their key, and when you do come back for the mission, this will allow you to travel through that same big door that we just came through and allow you to head pretty much straight to the boss battle. So for day 5, it's a carriage trip out to Whiterun so we can make our way to an easy dungeon escapade. And after several sneaky summons, we had the key we needed, and it was only a matter of time and distance to accept the quest that would send us straight back here. Now, was all this a waste of time? Maybe, but we'll never truly know, so that's alright. Day 6, we're finally back talking to Urag, and then it's back out to Felglow to sneak through the front door and teach the caller a thing or two about magic. Mostly how to run from it and abuse poor NPC pathing. Nonetheless, after a lengthy engagement, it's time to head back to the college with the good news so we can get on with the rest of the quest. To finish things out nicely for the day, we took a trip down into the Midden to visit the slowest talking NPC to have ever lived in a video game. Day 7, we spoke briefly with the Archmage and Mirabelle before being told we would need to go to a Dwemer ruin to find some mages with information we need. But seeing as how we're still only level 7, I've opted to take a pause on the mage quest line and hop on down to Riften, because, as you may know, we have quite a lot of stolen goods we need to get rid of. Now, in order to even be recruited by the Thieves Guild, we need to accomplish at least 3 things first. This includes raising our sneaking skill, pickpocketing a certain amount of times, and stealing around 150 to 250 items. Apparently, my Winterhold spree wasn't enough to mark me down as an accomplished cat burglar. And so, after proving myself to old Bryn Wolf, it was down into the Rat Warrens to find the Thieves Guild, and then around town to pound some locals for protection monies. And finally, we had access to the Thieves Guild fence. Time to go sell all these staves that we stole from Winterhold. Day 8, now that we have a reliable source of money by just selling a couple of staves every time we visit Riften, it's time we focus on our other major weakness, ourselves. The next mage quest requires us to face the Falmer, and as it stands, I don't think we would have a very good chance in the dangerous Dwemer dwellings. So just like every great boxing movie, it's time for a training montage. And on day 9, finally after we felt we were strong enough and loaded up with enough cash, it was back off to Windhelm. We're not actually going in the city here, but the stables are located a lot closer to the ruins we need to find than Whiterun currently is. And 500 gold definitely seems worth it to save me that trip. We finished things out by arriving at the Dwemer ruins and just barely diving in enough to set up camp and call it for the night. And on day 10, it was time once again to hone our skills of summoning our special pooch and staying hidden while he nips at ankles and slowly but surely carries us through another dungeon. Now most of this went pretty smoothly, especially once we got past the Dwemer sentry bots and on to the Falmer. That is of course until the very last room where we were forced to face a huge Dwemer centurion. Now you may be asking, Chance, why don't you just blast that thing with some firebolts? And that's quite simple, you see. All the robotic enemies in Skyrim are actually incredibly resistant to all forms of damage except for lightning and physical. Now obviously we are extremely lacking in the physical department, as most days I don't even carry a single weapon on me. However, we also only have lightning sparks as our source of electric damage, so that pretty much only leaves us with summoning our demonic doggy over and over again until sweet blister-inducing victory is achieved. Day 11 started out a little rough. I began things by going into the Hall of Elements and discovering Ancano. I began things by going into the Hall of Elements and discovering Ancano had betrayed us. Oh boy, who could have seen that coming? And immediately following this, we bore witness to the Archmage being launched thoroughly through the doors and into the courtyard. Yeah, he didn't make it through that attack, but on the bright side, if we can make it back from Labyrinthian, then we can get a pair of his sweet Archmage robes. Of course, we have to survive a Draugr fiesta first, and that sounds like a lot of work, so before we head there, I say it's time for another little training session, but this time, minified. Day 12, I spent all day doing research and studying up on conjuration. So, just like every college kid before exams, I locked myself in a tower and didn't leave until the smell revolted even myself. Day 13, I'd done all the training I felt I needed and had just unlocked a depth level of destruction spells, so I was off to Labyrinthia. And to showcase just how strong my new spells were, I wiped out a couple of frost trolls along the way. A week ago, they would have torn me limb from limb and had a nice mage kebab. Anyways, once inside the crypt, it's much of the same, summoning my skeletal hero so he can do all the heavy lifting, and sitting back and relaxing. However, this crypt contains something most Draugr tombs don't, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is a big-ass skeleton dragon, who of course is also guarded by a couple of gnarly priests. The dragon alone was level 100 and his 2 minions were 50 each. Now I'm all for a grind, but this just felt like a little too much. So it's back to Winterhold College to try and rework some things. Maybe come up with a new plan. Day 14 and I'm off to Labyrinthia. I was determined to slay the dragon this time. And now I think I'll just sleep here and finish the main boss fight tomorrow. Day 15, I'm entering the chambers that clearly mark a big fight is about to happen when... Oh man, that was a crazy dream. Here I thought I had gone back to that labyrinthian place and a bug made it so the final boss wouldn't even acknowledge me or take damage. It was horrible. Thank goodness this isn't a game with tons of bugs, or else I would have lost hours of gameplay there. Day 14, with having been scared of that horrific dream of broken game mechanics, I decided I would move on from the mage questline and return to it at a later date, perhaps once I've had a chance to fully reinstall the modpack. And so it was off to Windhelm, to try and salvage together a completed questline before my day 25 challenge had ended. There I found a small child worshipping a corpse and chanting to himself, so yeah, it was pretty strange. Anyways, he assumed I was with the Dark Brotherhood, to which I didn't necessarily deny it. And then before I knew it, I was down in Riften, dealing with a cruel old hag whose life should have been snuffed out years ago. I decided to stay the night in Riften, as I hadn't yet visited here, and wanted to get a feel for a bed before going back to my fur bedroll on the ground. Day 15, I decided to stop off at Golden Glow Estate and wrap things up here for the Thieves Guild. With my new and powerful spells, wiping out the bodyguards was actually quite a breeze. Arengoth didn't really want to play nice, but when faced with the choice of life or death, he made the right decision. Following this, I collected my reward and headed back north to Windhelm, where I finished the quest with the little murderous boy and called it a night after a bit of arduous studying.
Aha! I knew you could do it. I just knew it. I knew the Dark Brotherhood would save me.
16, I felt like I was getting a little too cozy in life. Wanted to get back to my wild roots. So I rode south from Windhelm all the way down to Falkreath, where weather warmed and trees thickened. I'd gotten a letter from the Jarl about a task he needed completed, and I was the elf for the job. So a quick trip north, and a few fireballs later, the bandit problem had been dealt with, and I returned to the Jarl to be rewarded with 1,000 septum and the permission to purchase property within the Falkreath hold, which I immediately took him up on. I mean, most homes in Skyrim cost like 20,000 septums. This little piece of land only put me back 5. I'll worry about building it later, but for now, I can at least pitch my tent there, and hopefully not worry about squatters. That night as I slept, I was drugged and dragged all the way to an abandoned shack in the middle of a swamp. All this just so I can get a one-on-one with the Dark Brotherhood. The task the lady gave me was simple: kill one of the 3, but I always like to hedge my bets, so I blew them all to smithereens and we'll just call it good. The boss lady agreed with my tactics and invited me into her murder circus group. Day 17, to start things off, I made a trip from my new home over to the Dark Brotherhood Sanctuary. There I was given a set of 3 contracts.
Well, as it turns out, there are a few lingering contracts we haven't had the chance to complete just yet.
The hardest part will be making those huge journeys each and every time I need to get to a new destination. First off, it was over to Iverstead, where we hid near a bridge while our target approached, and ultimately we finished him from behind a tree. Next up, it was north, near Windhelm, where some poor squatter had been making camp, and we'll just say maybe he put a little too much gas on the fire one evening. Finally, it was out to Dawnstar. There we actually had to just sit, wait, and twiddle our thumbs while our target sat lazily at home, just avoiding us. Finally, she made the mistake of allowing a guard inside, to which I swiftly followed and delivered my extra exquisite fireball special. Finally, it was time to call it for the day, so I rode out of Dawnstar and set up camp. I mean, everyone in Skyrim knows only a madman would stay the night in Dawnstar. 18, I rode back down to the Dark Brotherhood to turn in my assignments, However, when I entered, everyone was gathered around a squealy mystery man, claiming to be carrying the Night Mother around in a box. I mean, sure, whatever your cult wants to do, man, that's up to you. After squaring things away with Nazir, Astrid gave me the mission to seek out a woman in Markarth, for another contract, of course, and so I was off to the Reach. Upon arrival in Markarth, however, some random woman was stabbed right in front of my eyes, with the murderer only yelling out some crazy nonsense. I'd say I'm surprised, but I've already seen a small child worshipping a corpse and some human flesh, so this doesn't really top the charts, you know? Anyways, I found my contact, a girl by the name of Muri, and discussed how she wanted her ex-boyfriend dead. Sheesh, I mean, I know breakups can be bad, but hiring an actual assassin? I feel sorry for the poor fellow. Not sorry enough that I won't go murder him, but you know, still. Finally, I rounded the day out by finding the low-life scum and roasting him to a crispy golden brown at around 600 degrees, using an all-natural fireball grill.
You see what's happening? But here's a little tip.
Then, just like Goldilocks, I staked my claim in whatever was left over from the lazy slobs that came before me, and called it a night. Day 19, I stopped off in Windhelm in the early hours to take care of the extra work that Muri had asked me to carry out. Should be simple enough. I mean, this woman is completely unarmed and unaware. Following this, it was back across the province of Skyrim to Markarth to collect my reward and tell Muri the good news of the belated lovers. Finally, it was back down to headquarters to fill Astrid in on my success, which she lightly applauded, and immediately assigned me with a new task of climbing into a coffin with an extremely old dead woman and eavesdropping on Cicero. I mean, the man just got here and you already want me to shack up with his mom while he plays with himself? Come on, lady. I did as told, though, so as to not set things off course for my journey. I mean, after all, I came to Skyrim in search of magic and mystery, and this definitely fits into both of those categories. I also told myself I wouldn't shave or cut my hair in my time here, so I can see the experience and aging that comes from this cold province. Day 20, I was back to working contracts for Nazir. This time it was a vampire lumberjack and an annoying bard. The vampire was easy enough, as I'm a master of fire spells, and the bard, well, at first he had my attention, I'm not gonna lie. His music was good, but as soon as the drum came out, it was time for him to go. After claiming my reward, I wandered over to my homesteadings, where I got to work building the foundation for a shack at least big enough to fit myself and a bed within. And this completely wiped me out, as it took till 2 in the morning to erect a couple pieces of wood. I mean, come on, how is it that hard? Day 21, I was riding out to Vollenrune to find Amon Motier. Mostly because Creepy Dead Lady told us so, but, you know, it turned out to be a pretty good contract in the end, as Amon had plans for the Dark Brotherhood to kill the Emperor. Now I'm all on board because I hardly know the guy and the pay sounds excellent, but in order to do this, I need a good team behind me. And right now, the Dark Brotherhood feels more like a band of murdering misfits. After bringing Astrid up to speed on everything, she sent me with the amulet out to Riften to speak with good old Delvin Mallory from the Thieves Guild. I hadn't spoken to Delvin since joining the Thieves Guild, but perhaps this was a good reason to start. After all, I was supposed to be completing jobs for him and Vex, so maybe I'll get around to that later. Day 22 and it's back to Sanctuary, exchanging the payment from Delvin with more orders from Astrid, as she wants me to pretty much carry out this entire operation solo. So much for having a team, but I guess it makes sense given she hasn't done anything except for bark orders and have a bad attitude since I got here. What a shit tier leader. Can't wait to replace her. Anyways, my mission carried me to Solitude, another capital city I'd yet to visit, so really this felt more like a vacation than anything. I mean, Solitude is beautiful. An absolute treasure among the white shit-covered wasteland that is Skyrim. I mean, no offense to the people here, but we high elves simply have higher standards of living. And after this, it was time to push a very large statue onto a very tiny lady. And then of course run like hell so we don't get caught. My goal was to murder the Emperor's cousin and force him to come to Skyrim. After all, can't really kill him if he's in another province. Day 23, I was given a new task, to follow and learn the patterns of the army commander's son, Gaius Maro. My mission ultimately is to assassinate him, and plant incriminating evidence that his father has plans to kill the Emperor. This will plant a seed of distrust amongst the Emperor's security, and allow for an open attack. At least that's the plans anyways. Now since I'm just supposed to be trailing this guy on his tour of Skyrim, I decided I'm going to take a little break from all this murdering madness, and visit that plot of land I bought. While I don't plan on staying there every night, having a home to store all my collected treasures, as well as extra loot, would be really nice. So it's time to change my name to Bob, and get to building. Day 24, I spent all day building the foundation for my home. Yep, literally all day just laying some wood, you know what I mean? It was hard work. but it needed to be done if I wanted my homestead to stand the test of time, and of course the occasional magical mishap when experimenting. And on day 25 I finished up on the roof and got a door installed. And finally, albeit boxy and unpleasant on the eyes, I had my own home. It was still completely empty as well. I haven't really had time to make any furniture. I mean, you'd think with Skyrim being filled with Nords, they'd at least have an IKEA somewhere around here. But I guess that's not happening anytime soon. Maybe dragon insurance is just too expensive these days. So there we have it, the first 25 days in what will be our journey through another 100 days in Skyrim. This one will certainly be more difficult than the last, as the sheer damage from the enemies is insane, but it's been fun nonetheless. If you've enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like down below and tell a friend. These videos take a lot of time and energy to produce, so if you're interested in seeing more, consider subscribing. It's free and will give you a better chance of catching our next video, or even seeing something from the past that you might enjoy. Either way, I do hope you're as excited for this journey as I am, and as per the usual, I do hope you stay safe, stay awesome, and stay crafting.